All living things eventually die, and the things which they create eventually die as well. As we know, no thing in this world can persist forever. You only live long enough to die of old age. Death by aging is something that the mind cannot imagine. We wish to live long and prosper in eternity. The hope to continue forever is born out of the fear of aging. We don't want to stop existing. The thought of nothingness after death, which we cannot bear, is unfathomable. In part because it is real. It is inevitable. That's a certainty of life that everyone and everything will face. Humans, wild beasts, plants, soul reapers, hollows, and even the moon and the stars and the sun are all equal at the moment of death from old age. The power of aging is absolute, and as such, regardless of their individual differences, all are positioned beneath the one that governs the supreme power. He is the God King of Hueco Mundo, and ruler of Las Noches. In the earliest ages in the history of Hueco Mundo, he was there. As well as being one of the oldest hollows, the king that rules all of Hueco Mundo is also one of the very first Vasto Lorde to exist. His power was considered vast and well known. Nowhere in the world was beyond his sight, and the very sky of Hueco Mundo was the roof of his palace. There is no power higher than his, and no new world other than the one he opens up. That was what he believed it to be until a bespectacled visitor put down the notion that his belief couldn't be further from the truth. His perceived reality shattered, and what's revealed is the decimation of the so-called world he boldly declared so much. And Expose is another being in a position of power that thinks they are better than they actually are, and nothing more than an ignorant old ruler that lives a conceited existence, and ignorant of the world beyond his own. Once revered as a god of the world, now dethroned king reduced to a subordinate position within Aizen's ruling. To add insult to injury, he was not even assigned as the highest ranked Arrancar, signifying his place as not even the strongest. He is not proud of his current status. He will not say his leader's name or address him with honorifics, and instead informally referred to him as boss. This will only be temporary, for everything around him is temporary. But he is eternal. Symbolized by the remnants of his hollow mask, a five-pointed crown, he continues to see himself as the king in his world. He is the Second Espada, Barragan Luisenbarn. The self-proclaimed god of Hueco Mundo is undeniably full of arrogance, egotism, superiority, and overconfidence, believing fully that his power is the ultimate power in existence. Because of this, he has developed an inflated view of his importance and greatness, likening his stance to the viewpoint of a god. He gloats at the face of the enemies that dare challenge him and laughs at their futile efforts to do anything to him. Thinking so little of them, Barragan deems their lives as exactly the same as those of ants. Being of the firm belief that he is superior in all ways, he can afford to amuse himself and toy around with his opponents, even actively encouraging the fullest of their potential, as he's strong enough to undermine any threat they may cause. Their battle tactics and grand plan will be read and brutally crushed into the ground by the forces of the ruthless and commanding warlord Barragan Luisenbarn. Barragan is callous and stern when it comes to imposing his authority over others. He will not hesitate to take charge and give out orders when the boss is unable to, which was clearly illustrated after the boss was imprisoned during the battle in the fake Karakura town. Objections from the other Espada will not be tolerated, and that also extends to the higher ranked Espada. In like manner, they need to be mindful of how they speak to him, especially the likes of a lower ranked Espada.
And you should mind the words you speak to me as well, Haribel.
His fractions, all of whom address him as His Majesty, and earnestly wait on him as such. A throne is pulled out for the king, who is their god, to sit upon while they carve a road stained the blood of the enemies for him. Since Barragan's pride is on the line, losing is not an option, and there will be no place for them to return if they dare fail. They are fighting in the name of those whom they serve, which is their majesty. He sent his fraction into battle fully expecting them to win, but when his fractions all died without completing the task they were ordered to do, or even taking the life of a single enemy, he was furious because their defeat made him look bad. Otherwise, their death didn't matter to him at all. While he may not be a ruler anymore, how he rules over his servants remains the same. He continues to still see their lives as mere pieces for him to use. Before he was defeated and dethroned by Aizen, Barragan Luisenbarn had grown bored with this complete ruling of Hueco Mundo, because he had nothing to do with his vast powers and army. If Aizen had not arrived, he would have split his army in two and made them fight each other to the death just to pass the time. The king of Hueco Mundo cared very little about who the guests were, and paid no heed to the words that were being said, but considered the three to be a welcome distraction from the boredom of a tyrannical king that had conquered most of the known world. What he didn't know is that the man that offered him a place in his army was about to end his whole career if he didn't accept it. Then, suddenly, Barragan Luisenbarn was forced to move down from king to another piece in someone else's hand. Ever since he suffered that humiliating defeat at the hands of Aizen, he made a vow to himself on that day that he would have his revenge and make him regret giving him more power, which he'll use to reclaim his throne.
I'm going to kill you all, and I'm going to do it with my own hand. I am the king of Hueco Mundo. I am a god. I can never die.
The Segunda Espada does not carry his Zanpakuto himself. It is stored in his throne, which is in the possession of his fractions. It is only when Barragan rises up from his royal chair is when he'll bring out his Zanpakuto, which takes the form of a large, double-headed battle axe. The force of his swing is strong enough to cut buildings in two, and the wind produced by the swings may be just as deadly, and deadlier than his unbelievable raw strength is his power, Senescencia, the ability to slow any target that comes near him and induce rapid aging with a mere touch. He is a force that is incomprehensible.
Rot! Arrogante.
In greatness, incomparable. In height, unsurpassable. In power, unstoppable. Fall into your proper place under the rule of the Grand Emperor of Skulls. From flesh to bone, Barragan has returned to his customary form of the God King. Watch in horror the Segunda Espada's resurrection, for it is the personification of death itself, in the form of a skeletal visage draped in regal robes of black, wielding a large double-headed jet black axe, and eerily reminiscent of the bringer of judgment, the Grim Reaper. Everything which comes near him will rapidly age and disintegrate, and everything that comes in touch with his respira, a black mist which he exhales, rots and decays in a matter of seconds. Doesn't matter who you are or what powers you have, all are equal before him, for everything is equal before his power. It is the greatest and most absolute ability that stands in the way of all creation, and he himself is protected from the effects of his own ability. He has control of aging, and aging exists in anything that dies. That's the terror of his aspect of death, old age, which is the most potent symbol of the king's absolute power. In spite of being able to wipe out everything around him in an instant, he'll delightfully pause to gloat over his enemies about how old age overrules and stands before anything that can die. In the Battle of Karakura Town, Barragan prepares to take action himself, but is met with disappointment that his opponents, the captain of the 2nd Division in the Gote 13 and her lieutenant, even together, couldn't make him move a single step from his spot. Right from the start, Soi Fon, who was considered one of the fastest captains, was incapable of landing a single hit on him. Completely outmatched in every way and at every turn, she can only react in confusion at the moments the Second Espada casually demonstrates his power upon her. Barragan simply taunts her, and precedingly releases his resurrection, which was entirely unnecessary, as he has achieved total dominance against his opponents. But it was to send a message that he is a god walking amongst mere mortals, and Soi Fon, transfixed by horror, screams at Omaeda to run because he is no match for him. However,
neither are you, Captain.
Unable to escape Barragan's respira, she screams for Omaeda to cut off her arm before it spreads further and turns her to dust. With the removal of her decaying arm, Soi Fon just barely managed to escape death. By putting things in a proper perspective and seeing the irony of the situation, Barragan found her moment of panic entirely comical. They are no threat to him, and being none the least worried about anything they throw at him, he allows the Shinigami captain to set up her plan, and in the meantime decides to distract himself with the lieutenant. Gotta give props to Omaeda for holding the Second Espada for as long as he did. Growing bored of what Omaeda is capable of, and giving him every chance to attack him, Barragan sees that the decoy has nothing left to offer, so he prepares to end this chase. But right as he is about to execute the lieutenant, an artillery missile is launched at him. Barragan becomes somewhat surprised at this sudden turn of events. What shortly follows the huge blazing explosion is an exhausted Soi Fon, looking horror-struck at a bigger turn of events. She thought she had defeated the Espada, but what awaits her is a comical surprise from a very much alive and kicking Barragan. Barragan stopped Soi Fon's Bankai by causing it to explode just in front of him and directed the blast around him. And that's why Hachi came here, because if you put him in a place where he can't touch you, then he's not so scary. Well, shit. Attempt number 2. Build a wall. He will build many walls. Walls big enough to keep him out or in. Barragan found their attempt to buy time utterly comical, laughing out loud at the futility of their actions. But Barragan didn't seem to understand. Walls aren't supposed to lock him away from them. It's supposed to lock him in a place where he can't get away from this motherfucking nuke. Oh, you aged the missile to explode before it hit you the first time? I don't think you will this time. And he survived the point-blank Bankai explosion. Alright. Well, attempt number 3. Alright, if you can't tell by his cursing of his opponents, he's angry. And dare I say, he might even find the attack uncomical. Like the saying goes, the bigger they believe they are, the harder their mental will fall. After all the trouble Soi Fon and Hachi went through, yet again, immediately afterward, another was disarmed. Attempt number 4. Enter him and make him kill himself by turning his own power against him. Hachi transports his own decaying arm into Barragan's stomach, a place where the protection doesn't reach, which begins to disintegrate him from the inside. Wait a minute, that's not comical. Hachi states that if Barragan's power is truly absolute, then he himself shouldn't be able to completely stand against it. But he doesn't have a stomach, because he's all bones. But no, he's really dying. He is finally taken down, for real this time. Realizing that the end is near, Barragan throws Grankaida in one last-ditch effort to take his revenge before he succumbs to the power of his own abilities. What seems to be a direct course towards Hachi was actually aimed at someone else. The only one who he would hate more than the person responsible for his death is none other than the man that humiliated and stripped him of his royalty. In fact, that man's name is the last word he utters. The Second Espada died a wretched death, holding onto the anger, resentment, and the thoughts of killing Aizen Sosuke in the last moments before he died. His final act, his desperate failed attempt to take Aizen's life, was met with nothing more than a passing glance from him. Despite all of Barragan's boasting about wielding the powers of aging, and proclaiming how puny his opponent's existence is in comparison to the likes of his, he himself is no exception from the rule of aging. Like he said, nothing lasts forever. Barragan ages like everyone else. His belief in being an eternal deity was a product of self-deception to avoid the truth, that he too feared the inevitable. Well, at least his aspect of death, old age, will eventually take him. No matter how powerful or transcendent he becomes, not even Aizen will be able to escape death by aging, for it is inevitable. Oh, never mind. Alrighty, how do you feel about Barragan Luisenbarn? Comment down your thoughts, your opinions, and criticism of his character. I'd love to hear what you think of him.